After the first two hit-or-miss movies of the Thor franchise, fans were pleasantly surprised by the third installment, Thor Ragnarok, whose success could be attributed to the more lighthearted but still serious enough directing style of Taika Waititi. After the massive events in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, it seems that the God of Thunder will be taking on more universal threats alongside the Guardians of the Galaxy in future movies. Today we will be exploring confirmed news for the fourth Thor movie, alongside what we think is most likely to happen in the future. Before we get started, if you're new to the channel, click that subscribe button, as every week there is a new video about your favorite MCU heroes. Let's cover the facts first. The movie's current release date is set for February 10th, 2022 in Australia, and in the US and the UK on the very next day. We don't know if delays might happen because of the COVID-19 pandemic or other issues, but it's probably safe to say we'll be seeing it in the first half of 2022. Next, Natalie Portman confirmed that the plot of Thor: Love and Thunder is based on the comic book run Mighty Thor, a storyline where Jane Foster, her character, becomes a female version of Thor when Thor loses his power. Alongside this new power and responsibility, she also has to deal with cancer, which makes things a lot more difficult. Now, to break down Mighty Thor, you first have to know how Thor Odinson lost his powers. In a comic event called Original Sin, where the Avengers have to investigate the death of Watu the Watcher, a character plenty of comic fans will know. Nick Fury, using the powers of the Watcher, whispers something to Thor. This whisper alone is enough to make Thor unworthy of Mjolnir's power. Afterwards, Mjolnir lands on the moon with no one able to lift it. Thor then takes up an axe instead of a hammer and starts calling himself Odinson. After some time, a new unknown character managed to lift the hammer that was on the moon and started calling herself Thor. Odinson was enraged that someone managed to lift the hammer when he was unable to. But after seeing the new Thor fight solely for justice, he realized why the hammer chose her. Odinson then focused on finding the identity of the new Thor, but he is briefly taken away from his new task by Jane Foster, who is currently getting medical treatment on Asgard for her breast cancer. After a major battle where Thor alongside Odinson fights against the Destroyer, a villain you might remember from the first Thor movie, Thor flies away before Odinson can find out her identity. She lands back in Asgard, and as she drops the hammer and her magic fades, it is revealed that she is in fact Jane Foster. From there on out, she is Thor for quite some time. Oh, and did we mention that every time she uses her powers, the effects of her chemotherapy disappear, yet she still fights? You can really tell that Mjolnir chose well. Now in the comics, this is an amazing storyline. We highly recommend it to any Thor fans. However, there are a couple of issues to think about when it comes to it being adapted to the big screen. Problem number 1. Jane Foster has to be reintroduced into Thor's life, which might be difficult considering he's traveling with the Guardians of the Galaxy at the moment. And with the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 release date still being unknown, how will they get the two together on the same planet again? Problem number 2. Mjolnir has already been destroyed in Thor Ragnarok by Thor's sister Hela. Being that Mjolnir plays a central role in the comics, it will have to be remade, or some kind of replacement MacGuffin will have to be put into the movie. Problem number 3. Thor possesses the axe, Stormbreaker, which seems like a rendition of the Mjolnir from another universe that appears in the Mighty Thor comics and is wielded by War Thor. And last but certainly not least, Thor's power in the MCU isn't tied to the weapon he uses. While Stormbreaker certainly makes him pack a punch, we've seen that he can use his lightning powers even without it. In the comics, Thor dealing with no longer being himself because he's no longer the God of Thunder is a large part of his character development. Tackling these issues one at a time, considering that Thor can use Stormbreaker to summon the powers of the Bifrost, he could easily travel to Earth to perhaps visit Jane Foster after he finds out she's in chemotherapy somehow. As for Mjolnir being gone, there is a scene in Avengers Infinity War you might be familiar with, the creation of Stormbreaker. Now, one thing a lot of people noticed was that the Uru metal poured into the two separate forges, only one of which was used to actually make the axe. The other one could have been there for the handle, which wasn't attached in time, a problem which Groot handily managed to fix just in time to save Thor. However, the second forge might have also been there for a backup weapon, perhaps another Mjolnir, just like the original. Now for Stormbreaker, they could easily throw out the entire War Thor premise alongside having Mjolnir from another universe appear, and keep the axe as it is. And they probably will, having too many Thors in one movie might hinder the experience. Lastly, Thor could transfer his powers to someone willingly, perhaps Jane Foster, to save her from her cancer. Or someone could have a device that could temporarily or maybe even permanently steal them. But the simplest solution would be to have the power stay with Thor. But he's able to share it through the weapons made of Uru that he possesses. We'll just have to wait and see. There is another solution that could fix all these problems, but it would have major implications. As we discussed in our Deadpool 3 video, Scarlet Witch in WandaVision could reset the MCU in a similar way to the House of M comic storyline. An act whose side effects might change facts we know and shift them towards the ones from the comics, such as Mjolnir still existing. If you have any other theories, feel free to put them in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. But make sure to take into account that director Taika Waititi did say that this movie will be even more over the top than the previous one, which is saying a lot. Speaking of over the top, one thing Waititi confirmed was space sharks. Yeah, you heard that right, space sharks. Now, as weird as that sounds, these creatures play a role in the storyline, mostly as messengers. You see, when space sharks retreat in fear, it signifies that the god Tempest is coming. A lot of storm-related things. We know, but hey, it's Thor. Now, a lot of you are asking yourself, what is this god Tempest, and what does it have to do with Thor? Well, the god Tempest is the mother of all storms, and the size of an entire galaxy, raging destruction upon the universe since its creation, but never at random, always to those that deserve it. Even the Phoenix Force has been known to fear the god Tempest at times. In the Mighty Thor comics, it's revealed that Mjolnir was created from a piece of Uru, metal from the first moon in the universe, infused with the god Tempest by Odin. Now, surprisingly, we keep coming back to the hammer. It is an extremely integral part of most Thor issues, but especially in Mighty Thor. Without a similar MacGuffin, THOR Love and Thunder simply won't be a proper adaptation. As for the cast, apart from Chris Hemsworth's Thor and Natalie Portman's Jane Foster, Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie is also confirmed to return as a leader of New Asgard on Earth. We also have cameos from Groot and possibly other members of the Guardians of the Galaxy confirmed for the fourth installment by Vin Diesel himself, the voice actor for Groot, who said that the only way to describe Groot is as Alpha Groot. In the comic run, many Thor characters appear, including Loki, Odin, Frigga, Enchantress, the Dark Elves, the Light Elves, Cinder, who is a daughter of Surtur from Thor Ragnarok, and many others, some of which we might see here. As for the villain, it's confirmed that Christian Bale will be playing an as-of-now undisclosed character, but it is rumored to be Dario Agger, also known as Minotaur. This is important as the Dark Council, which plays a major role in the Mighty Thor comics, is proud to call Minotaur one of its leading members. Whether or not this rumor is true remains to be seen, as it does originate from 4chan. Sadly, this movie also might be Chris Hemsworth's last appearance as Thor, and as such, we might see his death, which we hope is as peaceful as his father's, rather than his brother's. And as always, if you've enjoyed this video, please click the subscribe button and leave us a like.